Welcome back, everyone. We've got some really interesting listener mail to dig into for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it seems pretty intense. Looks like we're going to be taking a look at the Qin Dynasty's, book burning.
Ah, yes. A pivotal moment, really, in Chinese history. Still sparks debate to this day.
Yeah. What was it about this event that that kind of grabbed your attention?
I guess, you've got this emperor, right? Qin Shi Huang, unifies China, finally, after like centuries of chaos, embarks on these massive projects, right? Like the Great Wall.
Yeah.
But then he turns around and orders this seemingly drastic act, this burning of books.
It's almost counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
You would think that a ruler, so focused on strengthening their empire would want to hold on to knowledge, preserve it, not destroy it.
Right.
So our main source here takes us right into the heart of it, to the events of 213 BC. And it really, really paints a vivid picture of this era.
And what's so striking is that the book burning, it wasn't some isolated incident. It was part of this larger campaign, to standardize, to control every single aspect of life in this newly unified China.
Yeah, that's apparent. It's everywhere. You see it in the standardization of laws, of weights and measures, even the written script itself. Like the first emperor was really creating order out of chaos. And that included, it seems, the world of ideas.
It did, yeah.
So was the book burning, was it motivated purely by a desire for control?
Well, it's certainly, it's a major factor. But to really understand the nuances, we need to look at Li Si.
Oh, Li Si.
Yeah, the powerful prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
He's often seen as the architect of this whole policy. And Senju describes this banquet, like a pivotal banquet, where a scholar, Chunyu, he criticizes the Qin centralized system.
Oh, wow.
And advocates for a return, get this, to feudalism.
Really?
Yeah, it sparked this huge debate. Li Si, he delivers this just scathing rebuttal.
What was his argument?
Basically, clinging to the past, a recipe for disaster. He believed that a unified China needed a unified ideology.
So, like, one vision, one path forward.
Exactly. A single, clear vision for the future. And he saw, these scholars immersed in ancient texts, clinging to outdated ideas, obstacles to progress.
It sounds a little on the authoritarian side.
Oh, absolutely. Li Si was a staunch proponent of legalism.
Uh-huh.
And this philosophy, it emphasized strict laws, a very strong central government, and, the suppression of any dissenting voices.
Yeah, so intellectual diversity, pretty much a threat in their view.
A threat to social order, a threat to stability.
So for Li Si, it was all about control, right? Controlling knowledge was key to controlling the empire itself.
Precisely. He believed that for the Qin dynasty to truly succeed, everyone needed to be on the same page, literally and figuratively. And, that's where this book-burning decree comes into play.
Right.
Cool. It lays out the key points. Destruction of historical records, except, of course, those pertaining to the Qin. The restriction of Confucian classics and philosophical works to official libraries only.
So no one else could have them.
Right. And harsh punishments for anyone caught with banned texts, let alone discussing them.
Wow. Sounds incredibly harsh. Draconian, almost.
It was. But there is something interesting here.
Oh.
Texts on, say, medicine or divination, even agriculture, they were spared.
Oh, interesting. Why the exception?
Well, that's a crucial detail, isn't it? It speaks to the very strategic nature of this whole book burning. Well, Li Si, he wasn't trying to just, erase all knowledge. He was trying to control what kind of knowledge was circulating and who had access to it.
Makes sense, I guess.
Practical knowledge, the kind that served the needs of the state. Medicine, agriculture, acceptable.
But anything that could challenge their authority.
A big no-no, deemed dangerous, had to be controlled.
So it wasn't about, like, wiping out culture entirely.
No. More about molding it, shaping it to fit the Qin vision.
Like pruning a tree.
Exactly. You remove certain branches to encourage growth in a specific direction. Li Si, he envisioned a society where education was laser-focused on Qin laws, Qin principles, taught by government officials.
Learning in the hands of officials.
Yes. And this concept, it actually has roots in the Zhou dynasty, which, of course, came before the Qin.
So this idea, this control of knowledge, it wasn't completely new.
Not exactly. During the Zhou dynasty, knowledge was largely concentrated among the elite. But it wasn't necessarily about, actively banning different schools of thought. More a reflection, I'd say, of the limited resources and the structure of society at the time.
But Lisi, he wanted to take it further, much further.
Oh, much further.
Yeah.
He wanted to create a system where all knowledge flowed from the top down, dictated by the state.
What a dramatic shift. It really makes you think about the long-term impact, on intellectual freedom, on how ideas develop.
It does. And that's something we'll definitely dive into further. But before we do, there's another point to consider. It challenges this common perception, of the book burning as this massive, massive bonfire, like this complete cultural purge. It wasn't. The reality is, as always, more nuanced.
Really? That's surprising. What evidence did they present?
Well, for one, they point out that back in 213 BC, books, they were painstakingly copied by hand on bamboo and wood, bulky, fragile things, and they were susceptible to decay even without a deliberate burning.
I see. So it was a preservation issue from the start.
It was. Imagine trying to preserve a library made entirely of wood, in a humid climate no less. It's a constant battle against the elements.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
So even without the book burning, a lot of that knowledge, a lot of those texts, they would have been lost naturally over time, just due to the fragility of the materials.
Right. And then you have the centuries of warfare before the Qin, too.
Exactly. So, it's very likely that a significant portion of pre-Qin texts had already been destroyed or lost well before the book burning even took place. So while the book burning was a significant event, undoubtedly, it might not have been this cultural apocalypse it's often portrayed as.
So the scale of the destruction might be less than we typically imagine.
Might be, yeah.
But wouldn't the very act of burning books, regardless of how many, send a pretty powerful message?
Oh, absolutely. It's a potent symbol, no doubt, of state power and the extreme lengths to which those in power will go to control the narrative.
Which kind of leads to a really important question. How effective was this whole campaign of control? Did it really silence dissent, shape the intellectual landscape of China?
That's a complex question. And it's one we'll explore as we go deeper into your sources.
Yeah.
But it's safe to say that the book burning, even if not as physically destructive as we often think, did have a profound, a lasting impact on Chinese history and culture.
Yeah. Feels like this one event just raises more questions than it answers.
It does.
Well, as we continue this deep dive, we'll try to unravel those layers of meaning, see if we can explore the lasting legacy of the Qin dynasty's book burning.
This idea of controlling knowledge. Yeah. It wasn't just about, suppressing dissent. It was about shaping the future, creating a society that truly adhered to the Qin's vision for China.
So in a way, Lisi was trying to engineer a cultural revolution.
Exactly. He wanted to break with the past, those centuries of division and conflict, and forge, a new path forward. And he saw control over education, over information as essential. That was essential to achieving that goal.
Fascinating. But wasn't there pushback? I mean, surely not everyone was okay with having their intellectual freedom, taken away.
Oh, absolutely. There was resistance, definitely. Talks about several instances of resistance, often from Confucian scholars who, they saw this book burning as an attack on their traditions, their values. They hid texts, tried to preserve them in secret. Some even risked their lives to defy the decree.
That's incredible courage. It shows you how deeply people valued their intellectual heritage, even in the face of, those were some severe consequences.
It does, and it speaks to the enduring power of ideas. You can try to suppress them, burn them, bury them even, but they have a way of, resurfacing, often in unexpected ways.
It reminds me of that saying, ideas are bulletproof.
Right.
You can't just eliminate them with brute force. But getting back to the Qin dynasty, how did they actually enforce this decree? Was it really possible to control what people read, what they thought, across such a vast empire?
It was a monumental task, no doubt. The Qin, they employed, a variety of methods. They had a network of officials. Their task was to monitor, intellectual activity, conducting inspections, searching for banned texts.
Oh, so like a thought police almost.
In a way, yes. And they encouraged people to inform on their neighbors, creating this atmosphere of suspicion.
Fear. That sounds eerily familiar, some of the tactics used by authoritarian regimes throughout history.
Yeah, it's a chilling reminder that the methods used to control information, to suppress dissent, they often share these similar patterns, no matter the time, no matter the place.
Yeah. And what about the punishments? I know we touched on them earlier, but what exactly happened to those who, defied the decree?
The punishments, They were brutal,
Yeah.
designed to deter any potential dissent, possession of a banned book that could land you in hard labor, public humiliation, even exile.
Mhm.
And discussing these texts, especially if used to criticize the government, that could lead to the death penalty,
Oh,
often
yeah.
carried out in a gruesome public spectacle. A warning to others.
It's just horrifying to think about the chilling effect that must have had on intellectual discourse. You'd have to be incredibly brave or maybe foolish to risk speaking out against the Qin, under those conditions.
Exactly. The book burning and then this crackdown on dissent, it created this atmosphere, an atmosphere of fear, self-censorship. People were reluctant to express their true thoughts, to engage in open debate. The fear of reprisal was just too great.
Yeah. It seems, I don't know, almost counterproductive, right? You would think that a ruler focused on strengthening their empire, they would want to encourage different opinions, to harness the collective wisdom of their people.
You would think so, yes. But remember, the Qin dynasty, it was built on this philosophy of legalism. And legalism, it viewed dissent as a threat to stability, a threat to order. Uniformity of thought, in their eyes, was absolutely essential to maintain control, to prevent the empire from fracturing.
But wouldn't stifle innovation, stifle progress? If everyone's forced to think the same way, wouldn't that ultimately just lead to stagnation?
That's a very, very astute observation. And it's a question that historians, they continue to debate to this day. Some argue that the Qin dynasty's this focus on control, on uniformity, it ultimately contributed to its downfall by suppressing dissent, by limiting intellectual freedom. They created this brittle system, incapable of adapting to change.
A good reminder that societies, just like ecosystems, right? They thrive on diversity. You need a mix of ideas, of perspectives,
Yeah.
even dissenting voices to foster innovation, foster resilience, foster progress.
Exactly. And, while the Qin dynasty's book burning might seem like this ancient event, it has some disturbingly modern parallels. Think about the ways in which information is controlled, is manipulated, even today. The efforts to suppress dissenting voices, to censor information that challenges those in power.
It's a sobering reminder, isn't it, that the struggle for intellectual freedom, it's ongoing, a battle that's been fought, well, throughout history and
Yeah.
continues to this day.
It does. And understanding the motives, the methods behind these historical attempts to control knowledge, well, that can give us valuable insights into the ways in which these patterns, they repeat themselves in different contexts.
Absolutely. It helps us recognize those warning signs, to be more critical of attempts to restrict access to information or to silence dissenting voices.
One aspect of the book burning I find particularly interesting is the way it's been used as a symbol. Throughout history, it's become this potent image of tyranny, oppression, a shorthand for any attempt to control knowledge,
Yeah.
to suppress freedom of thought.
It is a visceral image. I mean, the act of destroying books, literally setting fire to ideas,
Yeah.
carries such powerful emotional weight.
It does. And it's an image that's been invoked time and again, from the Nazi book burnings of the 1930s all the way to, modern day attempts to ban books, to censor certain topics. It serves as this chilling reminder, doesn't it, of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of defending intellectual freedom.
It's a stark warning. This is what can happen, when those in power feel threatened by ideas, when they seek to control the narrative, to silence those dissenting voices.
It is. But it's also a reminder of the resilience of ideas. Even when they're burned, banned, buried, they have this way of finding new life, of being passed down, through generations, of inspiring resistance, inspiring change.
Speaking of inspiring resistance, mentions how despite the book burning, some texts did manage to survive. They talk about hidden libraries, secret scrolls, scholars who risk their lives to preserve knowledge.
It's a testament, really,
Yeah.
to human ingenuity, human determination, even in the face of such repression. There were those who refused to let knowledge be extinguished. They understood that preserving the past, well, it was essential to shaping the future.
It does make you wonder about the long-term impacts. I mean, did the book burning ultimately achieve its goal? Did it create this unified ideology in China, or did it backfire in a way by fueling resistance, inspiring future generations to challenge authority?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll explore further, as we delve into the aftermath of the book burning and its lasting legacy on Chinese culture, Chinese thought. But before we move on, I want to touch on a particularly fascinating aspect of the book burning that I think often gets overlooked, the unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences. What do
Yeah.
you mean?
Well, you see, sometimes actions, they have these ripple effects that extend far beyond their intended target. And in the case of the book burning, there's evidence to suggest that it might have inadvertently helped to preserve some of the very texts it sought to destroy.
Really? That's surprising. How so?
Well, by banning certain texts,
Yeah.
by making them forbidden knowledge, the Qin dynasty, they might have inadvertently created this mystique around them. It's like the old saying, "Forbidden fruit tastes the sweetest."
Ah, I see. By making these texts taboo, they might have actually made them more alluring, more
Right.
desirable.
Exactly. It made people even more curious, to read them, to understand the ideas they contain. And some scholars believe that this might have actually contributed to the survival of these texts. If they hadn't been banned, they might have simply faded away into obscurity. But by making them dangerous, well, the Qin dynasty inadvertently ensured that people would go to great lengths to preserve them, to protect them.
That's a very ironic twist. The very act of trying to erase these texts might have actually helped to ensure their survival.
It's a fascinating example, isn't it, of how historical events can have these unintended consequences, consequences that ripple through time, shaping the course of events in ways that no one could have predicted.
It's a good reminder. We can never fully predict the long-term impact of our actions. History is full of surprises, full of unintended turns.
Absolutely. And as we delve deeper into the aftermath of the book burning, we'll see how this event, even with its unintended consequences, had a profound and lasting impact on the development of Chinese thought.
Yeah.
Chinese culture.
It really is incredible to think about the ripple effects,
Yeah.
From this one event. We've talked about the immediate impact, the suppression of dissent, the attempt to control the narrative. But what about long term? How did this book burning shape, the trajectory of Chinese history, of Chinese culture?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. See, the Qin dynasty, their reign was pretty short-lived. It collapses just a few years, actually, after the book burning. But the impact of this event, it reverberated for centuries, like a shockwave. It continues to send tremors through time, even today.
So even though the Qin dynasty itself didn't last very long, its actions had this major lasting impact. So what were some of those most significant, those long-term effects?
Well, I'd say one of the most immediate was a loss of historical knowledge. I mean, by destroying all those pre-Qin texts, the Qin dynasty, they created this gap, this hole in the historical record. It made it very difficult, for later generations to fully understand China's past, like trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces.
That must have been so frustrating for historians, trying to understand the events leading up to the Qin dynasty.
Absolutely. And it's a loss we still feel today. There's so much we just don't know about ancient China because of that book burning. But it's not just about, the loss of facts and dates. It's about the loss of different perspectives, different ways of thinking, different interpretations of the past.
Right, because even if some of those texts, somehow survived, the burning itself would have just narrowed everything. I mean, the range of ideas, the range of perspectives available to future generations.
Exactly. And this narrowing of intellectual discourse, it had a profound impact on the development of Chinese thought. It's impossible to say for sure, what might have been different if those texts had survived. But it's very likely that Chinese culture or Chinese philosophy, they would have evolved along a very different path.
It makes you wonder if the book burning, I don't know, almost in a way inadvertently shaped the very philosophies, the schools of thought that emerged after it.
That's a fascinating thought.
Yeah.
And there's evidence to suggest that might actually be the case. You see, one of the schools of thought that gained prominence after the Qin dynasty was Confucianism.
Right. Confucianism, with its emphasis on ethics, on social harmony, respect for tradition. I mean, that became like a dominant force in Chinese culture for centuries.
It did. And some scholars believe that the book burning, it might have actually contributed to the rise of Confucianism.
Really? That seems counterintuitive. Wouldn't destroying Confucian texts, wouldn't that have weakened that school of thought?
You would think so, wouldn't you? But remember, the Qin dynasty, their rule was harsh. And the suppression of any dissenting voices, well, it created a backlash. People, they yearned for stability. They yearned for a philosophy that emphasized moral values, emphasized social order.
So Confucianism, with its emphasis on harmony, on respect for authority, it might have seemed like a very appealing alternative.
Exactly. By trying to To erase Confucianism, the Qin dynasty might have inadvertently made it more appealing, more resonant with the people who were searching for a different way, a better way. It's a reminder that sometimes these attempts to suppress ideas can have the opposite effect. It can make those ideas even stronger, even more resilient.
Almost like a cultural immune response, like the body politic. It senses a threat, and it rallies around those ideas that are under attack.
That's a great analogy. And it speaks to the enduring power of ideas. You can try to suppress them. You can try to control them, to erase them. But they have a way of finding those new paths, of resurfacing in unexpected ways, shaping the course of history, even when they're seemingly silenced.
It's powerful. It really is a powerful reminder that ideas, they can't be truly destroyed. They might be driven underground. They might be forced to adapt. But they find a way to survive, to influence the world.
And in the case of the book burning, I think the most enduring legacy might not be the loss of knowledge itself, but the reaction it provoked, the very act of trying to control what people thought, what they read, what they believed. It sparked this resistance, this determination to preserve knowledge, to defend intellectual freedom.
So in a way, the book burning may have inadvertently strengthened the very values that it sought to suppress.
Exactly. It's a fascinating paradox, really. By attempting to erase the past, the Qin dynasty may have inadvertently ensured that it would be remembered, that the lessons of this event would be passed down through generations, serving as a warning, wouldn't you say? A warning about the dangers of censorship, about the importance of defending intellectual freedom.
And those are lessons that are just as relevant today as they were over 2,000 years ago. I mean, we see attempts to control information, to suppress dissenting voices, to manipulate the narrative. It's all around us. It's happening today.
It's a constant battle. And while we might not face that same level of brutality as those who lived under the Qin dynasty, we still have a responsibility to defend intellectual freedom, to challenge censorship, and to ensure that a diversity of ideas and perspectives can flourish.
Because ultimately, a society that stifles dissent, that controls information, that limits access to knowledge, I mean, that's a society that's destined to stagnate.
Precisely. Progress, innovation, even social harmony. It all depends on our ability to engage with different ideas, to challenge assumptions, to question the status quo.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the Qin dynasty's book burning, what are some key takeaways? What do you want our listeners to really reflect on?
I think there are a few.
Yeah.
A few key points. Yeah. First, this event, it wasn't just about destroying, physical objects. It was about controlling knowledge, shaping the narrative, suppressing dissenting voices. It's a reminder that power, it often seeks to control information, and that we must always be vigilant against these attempts to censor, to manipulate what we read, what we think, what we believe.
It's about recognizing those patterns, the patterns of censorship, of control that we've seen repeated throughout history, and understanding how those patterns might be playing out, right now in our own time.
Exactly. Second, this deep dive, I think it really highlights the enduring power of ideas. Even when they're suppressed, they had this way of resurfacing, of finding those new paths, of shaping the course of history in unexpected ways.
It's a reminder that the fight for intellectual freedom, it's ongoing, a battle that's been fought for centuries, and one that we're still fighting today.
We are. And finally, this story, I think it really underscores the importance of understanding history. By learning from the mistakes of the past, by grappling with the complexities of events like the book burning, we can gain these valuable insights into the challenges that we face today, and we can equip ourselves, to defend those values that we hold dear.
It's about recognizing those patterns, the patterns of censorship, of control that have repeated themselves throughout history, and understanding how those patterns might be manifesting, right now, in our own time.
Exactly. It's a reminder that history, it isn't just a collection of dates and facts. It's this living tapestry of human experiences, of triumphs, of failures, of lessons learned and lessons yet to be learned.
And as we navigate the complexities of our own time, it's essential that we draw upon that wisdom of the past, that we learn from those mistakes, the mistakes of those who came before us, and that we work hard to build a future where knowledge is valued, where freedom of thought is protected, and where the human spirit is allowed to flourish.
Well said. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. It's been quite a journey, exploring the intricacies of the Qin dynasty's book Burning and its lasting impact on Chinese history and culture.
It has. Well, thank you for joining us on this intellectual adventure. We hope this deep dive has given you some new insights, sparked your curiosity, and maybe even inspired you to explore further, to delve a little deeper into this fascinating, this complex period of history.
And as you continue those explorations, remember to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep those intellectual fires burning bright, because knowledge is power, and the freedom to think for ourselves is one of the most precious gifts I think that we possess.